Aloha. Aloha. This is a phenomenal crew. How exciting. Where's our Planned Parenthood crew? Where are all of you? Stand up. How long has it been since this phenomenal space has been opened? And when did you folks open your doors?
February last year. So,
It's not even a year. You can imagine sort of the gatherings that would happen, right? Is this not part of that vision?
this is like the rest of it.
We know the way to our heart, Ed. So thank you all so much for being here and mahalo for joining us. For those I don't know, my name is Becky Soon. Aloha nui. I'm excited to look across this group and see people that have been organizing in our community for generations, people that are going to be organizing in our community for generations to come. And it is so just incredible to be here. So thank you all for spending the time. Thank you all for welcoming our guest. We know how important it is here in Hawaii to welcome people and to create space for them to share them, and not only share their their thoughts, their knowledge with us. One of the things that I was happy to be reminded of before I walked in was honoring space. And so obviously here in Hawaii, the island that we're on is a really important place. I actually don't know a lot about the island that we're on. I don't know if anybody does, but I would love to hear more about the history of this place. The ahupua'a that we're in, though, like many of the ahupua'a that we're in, were filled with people who are trying to build a community for their kids, for themselves, trying to build a place that was filled with equity and justice, trying to build a community and a future that was hopeful and exciting. And I think that for many of us Democrats, especially, can I say that in this group? We're always excited, right, about the hope that is to come, and fighting for that future and fighting for the hope of what it means in our community. And we don't always agree on every issue, but I hope that we agree on the core ones. More importantly, we agree this at the end of the day, stand side by side, hold hands, and know that we're in this community together and fighting for our future together. So thank you all for holding hands together tonight and creating this space to allow for us to hear some ike from other places, and especially just from this really amazing Narohine, this really amazing woman who has helped to create spaces and empowerment across the country for many years, and we're really thrilled to have her. I think when Jadine, that was Christine texting me, if that gives me any pass. I think that when Jadine reached out and said, hey, look, there's this amazing time that we're in, and it's filled with fear, but it's filled with some exciting hope. And there's somebody who's stepping forward and saying, hey, here's some of the lessons that we can learn and embrace them in our community. The second that many of us heard we could possibly have Nancy Pelosi here, we said, absolutely, what do we need to do to make it happen? And many people stepped up to make that happen. So I just want to talk a little bit about tonight's goal. We have a few events happening throughout the weekend. Tonight's goal is to hear straight from Nancy Pelosi and have the opportunity to be interviewed by one of our own, Denby Fawcett, one of our renowned, one of our renowned journalists to get into the nitty-gritty of some of these incredible stories. And I know that I've enjoyed reading this book over the last few weeks, and I know that for many folks that I've chatted with, it's been a fun learning and absorbing. So I wanted to just sort of walk us through tonight. We're going to hear directly from Christine through a sort of interview style with Denby. And then we're going to do, a question and answer. And we're going to do it similar to how a lot of us are ma'atu. Okay, we're not going to be offended, right? But we're going to do question cards, right? So that's going to just help us with the fluidity of it. Who has the 3x5s? Sorry, I
We
should
passed
have
them out pretty much.
Pass them out already. Okay, so you all have 3x5. You've been empowered with the question material. Got it. Okay. So please feel free to write questions that you have either now or as the program goes on your 3x5 card. And what we'll do is, as the interview is going on, we'll go through those questions. We're going to try to do our best to consolidate them into, topics, sort of make sense together. And then we'll go through them. So the interview will be about 45 minutes, and then we'll go through these questions and answers for about half an hour. After that point in time, Christine is going to be outside signing books. Okay? And we ask if everybody, just for the flow of things, can allow everyone to get through signing the books before we do things like photos and other things. Okay? But hang out. We'll all be here, all friends, and we can hang out and talk story together as you wait to get your book signed and photos done. So a few just thank yous. Special thanks to Amy Monk and Yvonne Lau, who were two of our team members. Amy and Yvonne are two of our Patsy Team Impact board members that helped to lead the charge from the PAC. Lori Templefield and Edward Hemphill are in the back from providing us as this beautiful host space. And Stacy Yoshihara from the UH Bookstore. Stacy, are you here? Maybe outside. Okay. Oh, right in the back. Stacy Yoshihara from the UH Bookstore. And Stacy and the UH Bookstore is actually giving us a 10% discount on the book, so mahalo to the bookstore for making that happen. The regular cost of the book is actually $19.95. The book is being sold for a flat $18, so if you haven't done so yet, please go ahead and buy one because the book is out of print again. If you bought or will buy a book, you'll be given a 3x5 card, which hopefully you've already been given. And again, please write your name or the name of the person that you wish for Christine to dedicate the book to. So it'll just help her as she's writing the message if she has written down on the 3x5 what she's going to be writing. And again, if you haven't got one already, you can still do so afterwards. Okay. All right. Book sales. Yep, we're good. Bathrooms. Non-gendered bathrooms. Edward, can you help point us to where we are and where the bathrooms are?
You're right.
Thank you. So I want to bring up, with no further ado, and we'll have more mahalos afterwards, and we'll have more acknowledgements afterwards as well. But I want to bring up, with no further ado, Denby Fawcett. Of course, a veteran newspaper and television journalist here in Hawaii, an author herself, and of course, writing now as well as a columnist facility. We're really honored to have her. Reached out when I think you were out of town. You were abroad. Saigon. Okay, covering something exciting, hopefully. Yeah. Okay, good. So thank you for being here and for doing this interview. We wanted to be sure to get to the meat of things, which we know that you'll do. So mahalo to Denby for being here. Christine Pelosi, and I'm going to read right from her bio so we don't have any of her amazingness wrong. So Christine, for those of us that don't know, which clearly we all do, but just for those of us that will learn something new, Christine is an attorney and an advocate serving counsel for We've Said Enough and Partner Impact. She's worked as a deputy city attorney and assistant district attorney in San Francisco, special counsel to HUD in the Clinton Gore administration, and the chief of staff on Capitol Hill. Elected as California Democratic Party Women's Caucus Chair. Who here is Women's Caucus? Member. Yes. And Democratic National Committee Executive Committee Women. Christine Pelosi is the author of Campaign Boot Camp and Campaign Boot Camp 2.0 and has traveled to 41 states and 4 foreign countries conducting leadership training. How incredible. She'll also be doing a training tomorrow for some of our young and emerging leaders running for office. A member of the San Francisco Giants Community Fund Board. Christine resides in San Francisco with her husband, who is here. Peter. Nominated filmmaker and their beautiful daughter, Isabella. Yay! Turn it over to you. Thank you. Better round of applause.
So we're on the path in an impeachment trial, which resumes on Tuesday at 1 p.m. And so I'd like to start out with a few questions about that before we go on to the meat of the book, and then finally finish maybe asking Christine about why she wrote it and anything unusual that you learned, anything that surprised you that you didn't already know about your mother. And of course then her opinion of it. And I know you said she hasn't read it yet, but
She read it.
oh, good, okay. So we'll hear that last. But first of all, she was reluctant to go ahead with impeachment in the House initially. And what brought her to that decision? Why was she able to do this historic thing?
Well, thank you for the question. Thank you, Planned Parenthood, for bringing us all together. And thank you for my microphone for turning on. It's wonderful to be here in Hawaii. We love Planned Parenthood, work with them. They're in the book. You'll learn all about the coalition building that we do. It's also an honor that former Congresswoman Kalina Busa is here. Elected officials and party officials are here, and I have to give a special thank you to our host, Ray Chu, at whose home we are staying, and J.D. Nielsen, my dear friend of many years. Now, here's the thing. Simon & Schuster was doing a book series on women in leadership, and so they approached me and said, we'd like to have your cooperation on a book that we're writing. We're doing one with Bader Ginsburg, we're doing one on Nancy Pelosi, and I said, well, I will help with the book, but be authorized if I'm the author, the sole author, and I have all the final cut. But just so you know, I'm not going to interview my mom, and she can't do any proofreading of it, because under the House rules, Congresswoman remembers this, no member of a congresswoman or congressman's immediate family may benefit from a profit from their service in office. So had I approached her with substantive assistance with the book, that would have been a no-no. So, consequently, she just had to trust 50 years of parenting. And open mic, it was going to be written one way or another, so I thought, okay, we're going to do this. It hadn't really been my plan. I wrote the book on my phone, actually, in between going with Peter and Bella to various camps and activities and summer trips, because I hadn't really planned that. So, the last week of September, I'd already bought my tickets to go to Washington, D.C., to go to the National Memorial rally and vigil for victims and survivors of gun violence. And it's an issue near and dear to my heart. Oftentimes people will say, how can Nancy Pelosi withstand all this criticism? You know, the first time, her first campaign for Congress, J.D. remembers, it was pretty tough. There were 14 people running for an open seat. It's very, rough and tumble when you run, you know how that is. But she would always say, well, they can't take my children from me, so what can they really do to me? But when you're working with people whose children have been taken away from them, through gun violence or through disease or other causes, you're working with people who really have lost, a bit of themselves and a lot of their hearts. And so that gives you a special responsibility. And so the work that she does in particular with the survivors of gun violence was what brought me to Washington, D.C. to go with her and with a number of our friends. So I was on the way, already making my plans. The week before, we were having some planning calls about the vigil, and then we heard about the Ukraine phone call, what the president called a perfect call. And what happened was, my mom called me. I was at home. I actually had the pot holders. We have the too hot to handle pot holders of all the bills the Democrats have passed that Mitch McConnell won't bring for a vote because he knows they would pass, and there was threat in his hegemony and power, such as it is for now. And so she said, I got the strangest call from the president. And I thought, well, you would call it what isn't strange from him. But she said, he tried to talk to me about gun violence, and he said he was working on the bill. And I said, well, that's very interesting, Mr. President. Who are you talking to? Because you're not talking to any of my House members. You're talking to me, oh, it's going to be great, it's going to be great. Then he switches gears, and he says, by the way, that was a perfect phone call that I made. And this is to the President of Ukraine, where he says, we need you to do us a favor, though. You have to announce an investigation into Joe Biden in order to get the military aid that Congress has already passed, and that, in a bipartisan way, and that has already been executed and should be sent. And he said, this is a perfect call. And she said, well, it's perfectly wrong. And among other things, she said to him was, you are in my wheelhouse. I've been on the Intelligence Committee. I'm the longest serving person on the Intelligence Committee, over 25 years, because she was on the committee, and then she's on the committee ex officio by virtue of being the leader of the House Democratic Caucus. If you're the leader of the House or Senate Democratic or Republican caucus, you are in what they call the Gang of Eight. It's the four of them plus the four, the two chairs and the two ranking members, House and Senate. So that's what they refer to as the Gang of Eight. So you're in my wheelhouse. So then he went and made that very strange speech to the UN. Remember, he was kind of flustered? Well, we found out later because he was on the phone with her first. But basically, trying to basically say, you leave me alone about Ukraine and I'll give you gun violence prevention. So it's kind of a replica of the behavior from the Ukraine phone call. So the short answer to the question is, she often said he's self-impeaching, he's not worth it, but the Constitution was worth it. And once you see somebody commit a crime in broad daylight, you have to act, and so she did.
And then he was trying to talk him out of it. He points out in his lame way, but this was an advancement for him, actually, because when he first talked to her, he thought she actually worked for him. So this was him. He didn't understand the division of powers. And so in a meeting in the Oval Office, December 12th in 2018, he was calling her Nancy and Senator Chuck, Nancy and Chuck. And she just looked him in the eye and said, Mr. President, and she politely said, please don't characterize the strength that I bring to this meeting as the leader of the House Democrats as something less than powerful. We just won a lot of elections. And I'm not used to people talking back to him, especially a woman.
It was a strange meeting because just in terms of setting the scene, the very first time they met in the Oval Office with him as president 2 years before, and I talk about this in the book as well, they meet, it's the first time the leadership is all convened with the new president. So it's the leaders of the House and the Senate go over to meet their co-equal, the president. And normally the person talks about the founders, they talk about their families, they talk about what a historic moment it is that they are now president and they're all going to be running the country. Instead, the first words out of his mouth were, you know I won the popular vote. And she said, well, she thought, now, I'm not supposed to break protocol because the first person supposed to talk is the president and then the head of the Senate and then the Speaker of the House and then the minority leader of the Senate and then the minority leader of the House. But since he's breaking protocol and none of these other people have been in the first meeting of the new president, they don't know any better. He broke protocol, I will too. So she said, Mr. President, that's just not true. She said, and I'm not in County, California. She said, no, you need to stipulate to a set of facts if we are all going to work together. And he says, we're going to do infrastructure, aren't we, Mitch? And Mitch said, if you can pay for it, that's important because we're still waiting 2.5 years and Mitch McConnell still keeps holding it hostage. He doesn't say that about the war, he doesn't say it about the tax cuts if he says that about infrastructure. So flash forward to 2 years later, now Nancy Pelosi has won the House, has led the effort to win the House. She is on track to be elected Speaker. And they don't have a public commitment of 203 floor votes. This is what she would need to be Speaker. So he thinks by minimizing her, he is going to somehow have her cave to him in some way and give him his wall. And so they were having a fight ostensibly over the wall. And she said, she kept telling him, it's like Hamilton, you don't have the votes. Okay. You don't have the votes. He kept saying that he did. She kept telling him that he didn't. And that And so that's when he was putting her down. So I think that what made the moment so powerful and why we put this on the cover, the book cover has the red coat. It's sort of, it's a fire colored coat. She actually got it in 2012 because the San Francisco Giants had won the World Series. And Barack Obama had won re-election, so we were shopping for our outfits for the inauguration. And I said, Mom, you should get this coat. It's sort of orangey red, and you could represent the Giants on the stage at the inauguration. So she bought the coat, so it's 6 years later, and she pulls it out of her closet, she puts it on. So she leaves the White House, she puts on the coat, she puts on the shades, and she steps into history. And by the time she got into her car, I was like, Mom, you're an internet meme. She said, what are you talking about? I said, no, you are. First in the meeting. And, oh, well, he had a heck of a nerve saying that to me. I said, well, I know the country saw you respond to that. But then I think it was also, and apropos of some things we've heard in the news this week, I'll just conclude my answer with this. First of all, there are a lot of people who would want to sit in a room and go toe-to-toe with any president, much less that one, and let him know what they thought. Second of all, he was trying to minimize her as a woman, as if, you know, because you don't have the votes to be speaker that are public, somehow I can pull one over on your caucus. Suddenly you're going to give me a wall because you may not have the votes to be speaker. And third, I think that so many people have been waiting so long after all the sexism that have been hurled at Hillary Clinton and that have been hurled at Nancy Pelosi. They wanted to see a woman in full just stand up for herself, and that's what she did.
Especially important because of him, because he's someone who's disparaged women forever, and we know if he doesn't like a woman, he'll say she's crazy, like our own Mazie Hirono, who goes around saying crazy Mazie, and also that he came to power paying off hush money to a pornographic movie star and to a Playboy model who said they had affairs with him. To have his opponent, his most public opponent, be a woman, and a very powerful woman. And I think it brought a lot of joy to many, many people. Men and women alike. And then I read this interesting thing about your mother afterwards, too, that she went after. This was a bizarre meeting, because it was essentially a photo op. They weren't supposed to really chat back and forth. And he used it to bully them, or tried to, and it failed. So she went back to talk to other Democrats. And someone who was in the meeting said that they were just laughing, and it was so funny. And she said it was like being in a tinkle match with a skunk. She said, I just wanted to be the mom in the room. And, I think that was one of the interesting things you brought out in your book, just the mother, how she gained, you know, she grew up in the 50s, as I did, and women weren't supposed to do much of anything. And she was a mom. She had 5 children in 6 years, but she brought the power of what she learned from that into her adult life, and she was proud of it. I wondered if you could talk to that, because in my era, people would just say, oh, well, I'm just a housewife. And she's made a deep pride in being a housewife.
Well, I think there are a couple of things about that. When my mom grew up in Baltimore, and thank you for my Italian lay over the top of Italian colors. Little Italy, Baltimore. When she was 6 years old, my grandfather was the mayor. When she left to go to college, he was still the mayor. So her first public speech, which the nuns helped her write, was at his inauguration for mayor. So their whole, and he was a New Deal Democrat who got elected to Congress before she was born. He loved the president so much he named one of my uncles FDR. They agreed on everything except the creation of the state of Israel and the treatment of Jewish refugees. That was where he parted. My grandfather had been a Shabbos Goy in Baltimore growing up, so he had a special affinity with Jewish people, and he, you'll forgive the sexism of it, on the House floor say he was speaking on behalf of the Jewish Men's Congress. We would say People's Congress. But nevertheless, they had all these boys and all the men were groomed for public service. And for my mom, they said, well, maybe you could be a nun. Obviously that would be a lot of things are different, including, not this competition today. And she said, well, if I would be anything, I'd be a priest, because that's where the power is. But they groomed everybody for service, but they groomed men for the public role in that. But to understand my mom is really to learn about my grandmother, Nancy Lombardi D'Alessandro, who herself was an immigrant, who came over as a little girl. We took Bella and her brother Octavio to Ellis Island to show them where their grandparents and great-grandparents had come at various times. And she came over as a little girl, and they went to Baltimore. Now, my grandmother lived at 235 Albemarle Street. She got married and moved into 245 Albemarle Street. And her in-laws lived across the street at 302 Albemarle. So there really was like no baby. And when she was younger, she started having all these boys. She got married very young, started having all these little boys. She matriculated at the University of Maryland Law School. Wow. She hadn't been in college, but she matriculated into law school. And then this is before vaccines, and so one of my uncles died. And so she, was just heartbroken, and she had to come home. And she put that dream aside, and she raised her family. She was the first lady of Baltimore. She had her moccasin army doing all this grassroots work. But it wasn't until years later when I passed the bar in California and I sent her an invitation to my swearing in swearing in. It's a cattle call of thousands of people, and I state your name. Nevertheless, it's a pretty invitation, so I sent it to her. But she wrote me a letter that I mentioned in the book, and she said, I'm the second happiest person to receive this invitation from the bar examiners. How happy I am to see you accomplish what I could not 55 years ago. See, in the back of her mind, that was her dream. And so I think that, for a lot of people of that generation, their daughters and granddaughters are carrying their dreams. And I think we all, as Becky was saying in the beginning, when we talk about the elders and we talk about the generations that came before us, it's also very important for us to remember how many dreams we are carrying and instill in our children and in the people we mentor the promise that you make as a parent or as a mentor. If you're going to have a child or mentor a child, it's an implicit promise to make the world safe and free and fair for them. And so really, my mom's public service really comes out of her mother and also of being a mom. Every day for us started the night before, because after we had dinner, we'd clean up dinner and put the bowls out and the cereal out on the table for breakfast. And she made sure that the 4 girls' Catholic school uniforms were pressed and our shoes were polished. She made sure all the homework was done. The next morning we'd wake up and we'd have our breakfast, and she'd have an assembly line set up for us to make our own lunches. She'd line up the 4 girls and do very tight braids. My dad would try to help, and dads aren't very good at pulling hair really hard. Their daughter's sweet. And so by the time we got to the bus stop, somebody's hair was already, let's make a ponytail. Dad tried. But the mom braids were tight, and they lasted. And, and so then we got home. We knew we had to take off our uniform, do our homework, and then we could go play. I did an interview for We Said Enough with somebody who, down in L.A., at NBC, and he said as a cub reporter he had come to the California Democratic Party office. JD remembers those days because you were the state director for our Senator Cranston. And he said, I saw your mom with the 5 of you at the office, and it looked like a lot. But that repetition of, you told somebody you're going to have a baby, you're going to change 5,000 diapers. They'd just be like, oh my God, you got to be kidding, right? You're going to have 5 kids, you're going to check X number of homework, you're going to make, you're responsible for 15 meals a day for 10 years. You just, you couldn't even do it. You have to put one good day ahead of the next. And that's how she runs the caucus when people are fighting. It isn't like they're, she makes each person talk. Well, what do you want? What do you want? What's going to make you happy? The congresswoman knows and remembers. It's not a matter of if you gossip, you get in more trouble for gossiping because you're upsetting the balance. And when you're a mom or when you're a leader, you are a keeper of secrets. And not only do you have to hear everybody's secrets, but you have to hold them, and you can't hold them against people. And also, if you've gotten in a fight with somebody one day, you have to let the next day be a new day. Because otherwise you're carrying around either a euphoric high that you're internalizing or a sad low that you're internalizing, rather than letting a new day come. And I think that's what parents have to do. And I think that that's what, especially women, are not given enough credit for when we try to enter public service.
I agree. Give your full resume, all of it, don't hide that. And one thing that was interesting to me, she was still uncomfortable with power. She started in party politics as a volunteer, a mother, and helping out, and then quickly rose through her talents. But she told Representative Lindy Boggs, who we know is the mother of Cokie Roberts, the late Cokie Roberts. Lindy Boggs was a representative from Louisiana. She had a southern accent. And Nancy Pelosi said to her, she, I guess, was Democratic Party chairwoman for the whole state of California. And she had a number of other jobs, many important jobs. And she said, Lindy, I think I have too much power. And Lindy Boggs said, darling, do you think a man would ever say anything like that? I have too much power. She said, what is it, the term? Show your power.
But she said, know thy power.
Know thy power.
Know thy power.
Yeah. And that's, you point out in your book, lessons kind of a template for anyone that wants to become powerful or good at their job, rise up higher than they may think they can. That's one of the first lessons.
Is really to take your seat at the table, because the fact of the matter is, you can, there are a lot of times when we'll say, oh, I don't need the title, I'll just do the work, I don't need the credit. No, you take the credit, take the title. Yes. Because it's important, and once you have a vote, then people want to know what your opinion is. There's also a lot of people, and I know Peter and I were just going through this last week, there are a lot of people who want to have a title and then they don't want to make a decision. And you're like, well, why don't you want to be the commissioner or the congressperson if you don't want to make a decision, right? If you're conflict averse, then be a volunteer, right? But at a certain point, as John F. Kennedy said, to govern is to choose. So if you're going to govern, you have to choose. And that's the way it is, right? So I think that's where you can't be shy about having your opinion. Another bit of advice that my mom talks about getting from Lindy Boggs is never let each fight be your last. It goes back to what I said before. You have to let each day be a new day, because you have what Nancy Pelosi calls the kaleidoscope of politics. We all may agree on one thing, but we disagree with you about something else. But we're all here because we are pro-choice, because others wouldn't be in a Planned Parenthood. Now, we all may make different individual decisions or counsel people to different individual decisions, but we all agree that should be our decision and not the government's, right? That's why we're here. Thank you, Planned Parenthood, right? So at a certain point, you are never going to get unanimity, and you shouldn't expect that, because we can send one person and most can stay home. But if you're going to have power, you have to use it. It's perishable. All these people have a 3-year plan, a 4-year plan. That's nice. You got about 6 months. Okay? So you have to show what you're doing, because you make one decision and you can make other decisions, and you have the momentum because you're a person that decides things. The other benefit about making a multiple set of decisions is that, okay, I might anger this side of the room today, but we're going to be back together tomorrow. We both know there's another vote. So you don't have to hold on to it for too long, because in that kaleidoscope, we're going to be working together. And yes, it means we'll be working with Republicans. Yes, it means we're going to be working on certain issues that are transpartisan, and that we want to keep them that way. I co-founded the DNC Veterans and Military Families Council because we didn't really have a home in the Democratic Party for veterans. And I felt we needed that. And I went to Max Cleveland, and he said, we'll make it Operation We Care. It's going to be veterans and military families, because they serve too. And so we got that done after the 2004 election, because we said we have to be able to do this outreach. We're not going to win the majority of the military vote on day one. We might in a generation, but we have to try, and we have to make these inroads, and we have to be proud Democrats in those other spaces. And in fact, ever since she ascended to leadership, was voted to leadership, Nancy Pelosi has had these roundtables with the veteran service organizations. That's how Congress switched from 1-year to 2-year budgeting. You remember what you voted for. And because those are the things that the veterans wanted, and also met with the younger veterans groups that were coming up, because they didn't feel that the veterans from earlier generations really it's like anything else, right? You don't understand me. And they're like, you don't respect me. So I mean, why would the veterans community be any different than any other community when it comes to intergenerational issues? But you give everybody a seat at the table. And again, claim your seat at the table and be there. But once you're there, you have a responsibility to be at the table. You're no longer on the outside. You're now on the inside, so you have to have results. It's one thing to say you wouldn't let me in, so I turned down some chairs, started a fire in the trash can. But once you're in, you have to lead. And you have to be so confident in your ability to be there that you're going to speak out and have more people come with you. Because what they try to do when you're the only one is say, well, you're the only one, you should just be glad you're here. Don't say anything, don't mess it up for everybody else. Just be glad you're there. You be there for a while and we'll see. But if you look at all the studies, and I talk about this in the book, when there's one, you're the only one. And by the way, you're the only everything. When I packed her go bag, the first time Nancy Pelosi became a member of leadership, they all have a go bag in case there's a catastrophe. So I was thinking, what should I put in there to have her have on the other side of a chembio attack or something. But she's the only everything. I'm the only everything. I'm the only other anything. I'm the only woman, but because I'm the only non-straight white person, I therefore represent the only everything. So you have to have company. You want to have more. 2, they pit you against each other. 3, you start to have critical mass. And if you look at all the studies, they'll say if you have at least 30% diversity, then you make not only decisions that have better equity, but they have better economic outcomes as well.
And another thing you mentioned too in the book, along with taking your seat at the table, and once you get there, not just saying, la la la, I got elected, but you have to be prepared, as we've seen with Nancy Pelosi, to take a lot of criticism, and Colleen knows that, and Michelle knows that. In elected office, you get pounded, and she's wonderful to watch, because Trump tries to suck people in by insulting them and calling them names, and then you go back and say, well, I'm not that at all, you're a jerk, it goes back and forth. But she's so calm. Can you speak to that? She said, and she just toys with him like a cat with a mouse.
It only looks that way because, as far as she's concerned, every insult he gives is just a self-diagnosis that he's projecting onto other people. So if he calls you, some ableist term like crazy, it just means he's feeling unsettled. If he calls you nervous, he's nervous. If he's calling you, whatever he's calling you, that's what he feels. And so there's no point in getting into that tinkle contest because he's going to win. Who is it that said something like, "Never argue with an idiot; they'll beat you with experience"? The point is, you have to be able to show your leadership skills. Now, in 2018, there were 137,000 negative ads specifically targeting Nancy Pelosi. 137. Now, those are the ads. That wasn't even the dialogue. We're just talking about the paid advertisements on TV. Most of them were related to San Francisco, so code word for gay, right? Yeah. And some of them were put out there by Democrats with money that she raised. Yeah. So there were some of us, and I mentioned this in the book, who were like, oh, come on, why are we giving money to people who are using it against you? Like, what are you doing? And she said, just win, baby. We're just going to win. When they get there, they'll understand. But they have to do what they think they have to do. They haven't met me. They don't know me. I'm not going to get in an argument with people I don't know and have never met. I will simply always tell them, this is who I am, and I hope when you come, we give each other an opportunity to get to know each other and to work together. And in fact, some of her strongest supporters now and closest confidants were people who, to her face, said, I don't think you should be speaker again. I want some changes. I'm disappointed. The people that were, lying about it and going behind her back and saying one thing and doing all that, that's a different revelation, self-revelation that they're making. But again, if you can be honest with someone and just say, you know what? We lost with a woman. I don't know that we can take a woman, right? Or we need a new, fresh face. Now can you imagine Anybody else taking on Donald Trump in that way? No, but that wasn't because she convinced them with a conversation. That's because they saw her performance. So I think the answer to dealing with someone like Donald Trump is twofold. First of all, she has always respected, greatly respected, the role of the President of the United States. I would argue far more than he does. So when you really respect somebody's job, again, that is why, some of those things look familiar to me, because it's, I'm not mad, I'm disappointed. I know you can do better. We all are waiting for you to do better. I mean, you just know it's that Italian mother guilt trip. Not that you other moms don't send your kids on them, but I'm just saying, the Italian one is in a particular, comes with a particular style. So some of it's that, but I think a lot of it too is the fact that she knows that this is ephemeral. The same people who tonight were giving her a standing ovation when she was on real time HBO, which you can watch later when you get home, or streaming online, were the same people who for months and months and months were screaming at her because she wasn't doing what they wanted her to do on one issue or another. So again, you can't take the highs, you can't take the lows, and you certainly cannot measure your self-worth on the basis of what Donald Trump thinks about you.
She also doesn't let anyone, reporters included, suck her into it. Because I saw a really good thing on TV where this reporter said, "Oh, we understand what you're doing because you hate Donald Trump so much." At the end of a news conference, and the news conference was over, but she went back on the podium and said, "Look, I'm Catholic. I don't hate anybody. I just forget what she said, but it's more like she didn't like what he was doing." But part of her power too is what you write about of her be your own authentic self, and that would fit into, be proud that you were a housewife and raised 5 children, and be proud of everything you've done. Don't measure yourself against someone that says, "Well, I went to Harvard and I have 3 degrees if you don't." And I like that very much. Can you speak to that?
Well, I think that there are there's 2 things I would say about that. One, yes, as to that press conference, she had just given, the Speaker of the House of Representatives had given the constitutional basis for impeachment. And a male reporter said something he wouldn't have asked a male, and didn't ask the men when they were taking on President Obama. And don't we miss President Obama, can I just say? A happy birthday to Michelle Obama today, sending out all the positivity. But they didn't say, "Oh, you're taking on Obama because you hate him." They went along with whatever the argument was and said, "But is that true legally?" They took them on in a substantive way, which is what you're supposed to do. So first of all, it was the sexism of making a gendered comment, which wasn't designed to be a gendered thing. And then when she said, "I don't do that. I was raised, in a Catholic home with a heart full of love. I pray for the president. I want him to do better." And that really said, really set the tone, because then he didn't.
What can he say?
Oh no, but Congressman so-and-so said. So then he tried to put the words in somebody else's mouth. And that's when she went back. And as James Corden, Bella's a carpool karaoke comedian, said, it wasn't just a mic drop, but she went back to the whole podium. So I think, part of it was, sometimes somebody, it happened to us today, can make what seems to be a neutral statement, but that the fact that they only make it to a woman, right, changes it. So context matters. The other thing is that, again, a credential sometimes is shorthand for something else. And there's a difference between being book smart and street smart. There are a lot of people that are book smart. They got the credential and they're, and that does connote a certain amount of knowledge. But that's not the same thing as being street smart. It's not the same thing as knowing what to do with the credential that you have. And I think it's really important, for 2 reasons. One, and my mom says this a lot, why are you calling people low information voters? Why are you criticizing people because they didn't have college? That doesn't, that's an insult. It doesn't mean they're not smart. It doesn't mean that they don't read up on the issues. It just means they don't have a degree. I remember when we were going through the GI Bill for the 21st century. an update on the old GI Bill. Remember, the old GI Bill was a good GI Bill, except it ran through the state. So all the Jim Crow and all the racism was still there because it still depended on what the state was going to do, which is why so many African Americans and other racial minorities were locked out of GI benefits. So when they were rewriting it, they said, we're not going to go through the states. We're going to go directly to the people. You can apply directly for the benefits. And they also, one of their taglines was going to be, thank a vet, send them to college. Except we sort of got the tug on our shoulders from people who said, you know what? If I was going to do that, I would have gone to college and been ROTC, right? I would have gone in as an enlisted officer. I enlisted because college wasn't my thing. So don't separate like the smart veteran from the not smart veteran. It's the same thing with immigration. We want a path for legalization for everybody who's worthy, willing to go through the steps, right? We're not going to separate. We love the dreamers and we lift them up because they're the stars, but we're not going to say, and if you don't qualify as a dreamer because your grades aren't that good, we're suddenly not going to give you a path to citizenship, and you can do everything else. So I think the thing about fighting credentialism is she fights it based on her own credential. Her momness is her gold star.
Yeah.
But also to say, be careful about being elitist, because even something that we want people to aspire to, a quality education, can sound like an accusation for people who are very smart and very talented, but an Ivy League education is not their dream and it's not their thing. And I think that's the kind of compassion that really comes from knowing people and listening to people and not just saying, oh, here's the soundbite, here's the message from a pollster. Go test that out in the street. Again, be street smart, not just book smart.
Yeah, and then part of her street smart, I think, is that she believes in collaborative genius, and that speaks to that. You don't have to have gone to an Ivy League college. Every person in this room has an area of brilliance, and that's helped her leadership, I think, because she can see that in everyone in the house.
I would say that's the biggest change, and I know Congresswoman probably has some reflections on that as well, but it used to be, when we were passing the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act, one of the things we had was a website called Faces of Care, where people would upload their stories. It was like a Tumblr, and then the members of Congress would say, oh, okay, who's from my district in Hawaii? I'm going to go tell that story on the House floor. And that was very effective, and you lift people up, and that's a beautiful thing for those who want to share their stories publicly. We learned quickly that we had to build a network of grassroots and social media support around people because they would get viciously attacked by the right wing. I mean, once Rush Limbaugh was attacking Michael J. Fox, who's like a multimillionaire and had the skills to fight back, but still said he was faking his Parkinson's, milking it, he said, to try to get federal benefits for other people. Michael J. Fox could fund his own research. That wasn't the point. What is what he was trying to do for other people. But we realized I need to build that up. But what changed and what happened right after the election? I mean, literally, we were on the phone the day after the election with the group saying we know he's going to come after healthcare, we have to protect it, was, okay, we're going to bring back Faces of Care, but this time people are going to tell their own stories. And so rather than Nancy Pelosi's having a press conference, let me go find someone with this particular health condition to come be a part of it, they'd say, well, let's get on the phone with the groups and say, what do your people want to hear? You have the press conference, and Nancy Pelosi's going to come. So that's the difference between speaking truth to power and giving power to truth. And that has changed over the years, I think, for the better, because two things happen. Take, for example, the Fight for 15. We all have been fighting to raise the minimum wage for a very, very, very long time. And that's great to go do that. But what happens now is that the women of color who've been leading the Fight for 15 are the ones who designed the march on the Capitol, who designed the press conference. It's their press conference, and then you see Nancy Pelosi greet them and give them, a permit to be there, and the podium to speak from. But then all those women and men, but mostly women out on the picket lines, see their colleagues leading. So that, I think, is what's really important. It's the lived experience matters, it's the personal expertise matters, and also, rather than having, us everyday folks be, props for somebody else's event, we're the ones having the events, and Nancy Pelosi's telling her members, you have to give up some of that control, because the control belongs to the people anyway, they're your bosses, so let them define the struggle and be the stars of it.
I was wondering, when you were writing the book, of course it's filled with praise for your mother, and is there anything bad about her?
She won't let Bella have chocolate ice cream for breakfast. I would say this. I'll tell this story because I can't be polite without telling this story. I think it's a matter of styles and what our perspectives are. As was mentioned, I chair the California Democratic Party Women's Caucus. We are the biggest caucus in our state, and therefore that makes us the biggest constituency caucus in the Democratic Party in the country. So we're big, we're diverse, we are white. We really worked hard. We started the Me Too politics movement. We signed on to the letter that Adama Iwu, wrote. We have been out there. We are very, very, very proud of ourselves. And so what's always top of mind for me are where are the women? Where are the women of color? Where are the women in this conversation? So it's the night before a big Senate vote on the Graham-Cassidy bill, which was their, Trump don't care bill. So I'm watching at home C-SPAN, all our friends are there. Now you remember the first time 10 years ago, everybody on the mall with the Tea Party. This time everybody on the mall were the progressives. So that was a good sign already. There was the patient advocates, Planned Parenthood was there, many advocates were there. So I'm watching my mom and I'm live tweeting, and my mom does a speech and she keeps talking about John McCain. Senator McCain is, he has cancer, but we're hoping that he'll be able to make it tomorrow for the vote. That's so nice. I call her up. I know she can't answer the phone like that because she's still talking, but she just finished talking. And I'm like, Mom, what about Macy? What about Macy? Because as you all know, Macy Hirono also had cancer, also was going through treatment, and was also leaving her sickbed to come vote. So I'm like, what about Macy? And so I leave that message. So then I'm away from my phone, and she leaves me a message back. And she says, this is in the book, I received your very stern message. Be calm. I have a plan. So the next day, you might remember, Macy was there. John McCain was there. He came in, huddled with a couple of senators, did this, right? Already know.
Right, that's right.
Okay, so when I'm writing the book, I find out two things. One, I find out that after that rally, after she returned my stern message call, she put in a call to John McCain and asked him to come. So clearly there had been an audience of one for her speech. And second, I told George Miller, I could come forward to George Miller, and he just started cracking up. He said, oh, come on. Macy was good. She knew she was good. That wasn't the play. The play was for John McCain. But you were out there, what about? She already knew. So she was 20 steps ahead of me, and so was Macy. They all knew what the play was. And so I would say that from my standpoint, part of why I told that story was that I wanted to show that I was sort of the stand-in for everybody yelling at her on Twitter all the time. What about that? Why are you doing this? Why do you have that? I don't know. Tell me the plan. She's not going to tell you the plan. She's never going to tell you the plan. And there's two reasons for that. So I wouldn't say that it's a fault so much as it's incredibly frustrating for me as an advocate because I would like to know the plan. She's not going to tell me. But she's not going to tell me. She's not going to tell me the plan. And she's not. She might ask me some questions, so I might think that I may know about the plan, but she's never going to tell me what it is. So it's disappointing. But the other thing is that, and this is another thing that George Miller mentions in the book, a lot of people when they're, and this is good advice, I think, for all of us who are trying to get somebody to do something. Remember I said the governor is to choose? So when you want to tell the story of how I got this person's vote, well, some people like to go tell that story, down at Square Barrels or one of the fine institutions around the Capitol after a vote, like, hey, I know how we, I know how we got that person to vote, right? But then you can only do it once, right? You can only do it once because now you vote, now you've outed that person, right? And you've outed whatever intimate conversation went into that. So it's important to note that Nancy Pelosi never tells. She'll say, oh, he came around. Oh, she understood. But she won't tell you. Because she keeps it very close to the vest. Because there are a lot of times where there's that secret file that she has in her mind. When she was 10 years old, when she was Bella's age, she was at the door of 245 Old Marsh Street, ensconced by all the in-laws and outlaws. And she was answering the door to people or answering the phone to people who were coming to the mayor's house to get help. And so when they asked for help and they would find out, like, here's how you can get a job, here's how you can get into public housing, here's how you could get somebody into a hospital bed, they'd write down the favor that they did and the person's phone number, or they would look, and they called that the favor file, and they would keep it, and then they'd be back in touch when they needed you. And, or you would come in and you would say, well, Colleen would say, well, somebody's sick, can you get somebody in Sister Mercy Hospital? And they go, here's somebody we helped before from Sister Mercy Hospital. We're going to call that person and have that person Colleen, right? So then you pay it forward, right? And Colleen's name goes in there, and then we're going to call Colleen, and we need something that she has gotten done, right? So she does that now as but it's all in her mind. She knows all this business. She does business you don't even know you have. Right? She's already looked. Let's organize them. Where did they go to college? Who did they walk with? Because people have different relationships. Some people, they have a long walk from the Longworth House office building to vote every day. They could be walking with a Republican or a Democrat. She knows what flight plans they're on to get to and from their district, right? She knows when they go on trips together or if they're sitting together in committee, all of those bonding times, those in-between times, those side conversations. Now, if she gets out there and tells you that, people are going to stop having those conversations, right? She said, the first rule of leadership is, do they want to be led? Then it's, how do they want to be led? And do they like your brand of leadership? And if you are the kind that listens and tells, they don't want that. They want someone who's a confidant. So I would say the lesson for all of us is, as maddening as it is when she knows all this stuff and she won't gossip, or I'll tell her something and she'll be, oh yeah, we were wondering when that was going to come up. I'm like, well, who? Why didn't you tell me? Story to tell. It wasn't my business. But the point is, you can't. Because if you want people to trust you, then you have to be willing to keep a secret, and you have to be willing not to talk, and you have to be willing to run that file in your own head and just take the names and make the calls and be a real keeper of secrets. And so I think it's really important, as much as we want to be transparent about what we do, it's also important that people transparently see you keeping secrets, keeping confidences, being a trustworthy person. You don't have to tell people everything that you know all the time. It's better that you can show them what you know by delivering a result.
They're calling us now for questions, so we might as well end on what the worst thing we've heard about Nancy Pelosi is that she won't reveal her plans. That's for a good reason, as Christine said. That's frustrated she could get. So we'll be hearing from questions now.
We have our Q&A.
Yeah.
Okay, so while we're waiting, I'm going to tell you a few quick momisms while we're waiting on the question. These are the things that she would tell us when we were growing up. About homework, proper preparation prevents poor performance. Okay? About dating, say yes, they might have cute friends. Or, never, for the girls it was men, but it could be anybody for anybody. Don't date a cheap person. If they're cheap with their money, they're cheap with their emotions, and they're cheap with their love. And about betrayal, and this certainly reminds us of the betrayer in chief. Oh, they loved you, but they loved themselves more. Right. Yeah. You're very welcome.
So that dovetails really nicely to our first question. So many of the stories that you talk about in your book, at least the ones about her raising you and your siblings, come from a time period in your life when you were about maybe the same age or near the same age as your daughter Bella now. Are there certain lessons that you find yourselves turning to most frequently and that work for you as a mom?
Well, some work and some don't. One of the benefits and curses of raising Bella in public service, and we told this to President Obama when she was about 4, was that I said to her, I was trying to put her to bed, and I said, Bella, you really need to go to bed. And she said, you're not the boss of me. Mimi and Obama are. He thought that was great. I did not think it was as great. But, I mean, technically she was right in the speaker and the president. However, she learned that a little too well. I will say this. The one thing that we tell Bella is to be herself. She loves theater, and she loves acting, and she loves has her own creative style, and we want her to have that. The other thing, that my mom would tell me, and that we try to tell Bella, is on the one hand, we want you to be strong enough to take on the world. On the other hand, you do have to respect your teachers even when they're wrong, because they're your teachers. So find a way to assert what you need without completely undermining their need to assert discipline in the classroom. And that, that was tough for me. It's tough for Bella. It's tough for a lot of us who want to, teach our teachers some things that they perhaps need to know.
So, the most famous clap word known around the world came straight from your mom. Your thoughts, your mother's thoughts. Is there more of a story there?
Okay, so this is another example of where, when they're in the House chamber, they're in the House chamber. You can't respond. When my mom was being elected speaker, did any of you watch that vote? Did any of you see Bella?
Yes.
And Bella was jumping up and down. She was so funny because we had to behave. I mean, you have to behave in there and you get booted. So Bella was sort of everybody's in because she was on the House floor. She could jump up and down. And my mom had, because when they vote, they'll say the name. So they say Hanabusa, and Hanabusa would say Pelosi. So there were a bunch of people in the O's and P's voting Pelosi. So when they said Pelosi, my mom wasn't aware that it was, then the clerk repeats the name. So he had already repeated the name from Mr. Payne, and then it was time for the next vote. And so Bella ran over to my mom and realized it was a silence when he said Pelosi, and said, no, it's time for you to vote. So she yells Pelosi at the same time as my mom. So they both started. Bella was jumping up and down, head moshing, much to the great delight of everybody on Twitter. Now, I was in the gallery. I couldn't use my phone, so I had no idea that it was becoming an international meme, Bella's enthusiasm for the day. Similarly, during the State of the Union, when you're up there, you have you're up there. Now, I told her, Mom, just read. Don't roll your eyes. Don't roll, she got that. Don't roll your eyes at him. Don't do that under comment where you're, mumbling to yourself about don't do that. I mean, I was a trialer and they told me the same thing. They're like, just take notes. Like, just don't roll your, don't, sigh dramatically at the judge. So the first part of reading to the class was my mom reading, and they're like, she looks like she's reading some homework that somebody crammed for at the last minute. Or is Nancy Pelosi ordering a menu? Is that a Postmates menu that she's looking through? So they were first, everybody had something. I thought, well, maybe that wasn't the best advice, but it was still better than her, physically reacting to him. But then when he said, again, trying to trade progress on bills for him not being investigated and basically saying something to the effect of, well, if we only gave up this division, we could make some progress. But he's the one with the divisive behavior.
Right.
So she got up and kind of, okay. Oh. JD's got it. So, many people describe it as, oh, this is the look your wife gives you when you put the toilet paper on the toilet bowl. This is the men that change it. Not that we don't love you men, but the men in heterosexual marriages who change a diaper. And it's like, oh my God. Oh, yeah, good, honey. Or for us, it might have been like, oh, we return the car home, on time under curfew with gas in it. This is like the bare minimum of what you're supposed to do. But, okay. You tried it. So I just completely had a flashback to my teenage years because I had seen that look over and over again. And she's like, oh no, I thought if that's what you wanted to encourage, so that would be okay. It was like, no. I don't know, I quite believe that. But again, she didn't even know. It was all Doug Mills, and great photography. He caught this 1 second. He caught it. And it went everywhere. It went everywhere. So by the time she had gotten back to her office, we're like, Mom, you won't even believe what happened. What are you talking about? So I don't even think that she actually understood how we, how we all experienced it until she saw the replays and then the photograph. Of course, we have it as pins. But I think, again, it's one of those things where she's saying to him, you can do better.
So along those lines, there are some who wonder or posit that President Trump's behavior is all an act. What are your thoughts?
Well, to quote Nancy Pelosi, nobody knows how ill-equipped Donald Trump is to be president of the United States better than Donald Trump. He is impeached for life. He is impeached forever because he did self-impeach. He, every day, demonstrates that he shouldn't be there. And there's a particular issue. Now, a lot of people will say there's a lot of, it's not an act. He really is a grifter. And he really does have a sense, and you see this with Lev Parnas, who's playing the game of, you haven't met me, here's our photograph. You know, so it's like, you know, every hour there's someone, we never got it, well, here's a video. And it's not just like a random selfie. A lot of people take, you know, selfies with a lot of us, right? It's in the White House. You know, it takes a while to get in through security and all that. But it's almost like he has a disdain for people who are doing it the honest way. Like if you don't have a side hustle that's a little bit grifty, he doesn't even respect you. And he takes people that are broken, like a Rudy Giuliani, you know, or like a Bill Barr. He takes people that are already broken and he lifts them up and he gives them that opportunity that they always wanted. Then they're totally indebted to him. And he almost doesn't mind that they're also doing a side hustle because in a way, those imperfections make them even more beholden to him until, of course, it's all blown up. So I do think the bluster is an act. I do think that he is deeply, deeply, deeply disturbed by all of this. And I do think that there are times, and there are also times when he looks at Nancy Pelosi and she's giving him one of those looks that says, really? You're president of the United States. Can't you just for a minute live up to the moment?
Yeah, right.
You know, live up to the opportunity. There are not that many people who have ever held this position in the world. It's such a special opportunity. What are you doing? And I do think that there are moments when he probably is thinking, I really wish that some of this were legit. He knows it's not legitimate. What he's trying to do is make this a base election and make it so awful for everybody else that the combination of institutional voter suppression and infotainment manufactured voter depression is gonna turn off independents and make Democrats fight with each other or be forced to stay home because we don't have the means to vote. So I think what you're gonna see next week in the impeachment trial is you're gonna see the Republicans have to make a choice. Maybe Donald Trump can win a base election only. Maybe some of their colleagues from very, very red places like Wyoming can win on a base election only. But there are a lot more swing voters and Democratic voters and would-be voters in swing states like Arizona, for example, where that mentality is not going to work, and he's not going to unelect the House majority if he thinks that it's just going to be a base election, because Democrats voted once, new voters continue to be registered and voting, and we're not going away.
Many of us, here are organizing at various levels. I see some elected officials across the room. I see advocates. I see people who are working in government, outside of government, who are have choice words about government. Sort of a wide spectrum of people who are all moving towards something that looks like better than what they know that what their community deserves. And so whether it's around reproductive health. Today we celebrated the 100th anniversary, or I shouldn't say celebrated, we recognized the 100th anniversary of the overthrow of our Hawaiian Kingdom, and many indigenous people are still fighting for rights along those lines. There's many spaces that we're fighting in, whether it's around domestic violence, around education, just a wide spectrum of issues on a local level. In your book, you talk a lot about your mom's pathway, the work that she's done around. In many ways, its roots being around fighting around what was happening in the San Francisco community around HIV and AIDS. And so for those of us that are organizing on a local level, what do we do about this national cluster? What would you say? How do you help? How do we connect the dots? How do we stay excited? How do we stay engaged and fighting for a national level through local issues?
Well, I'd say first, it's really important to know your why and know your purpose. There are a lot of things you could do with your time. I'm very grateful that you spent it with us on a Friday night. You have a lot of choices, and we're glad you made this one. I would say two things. When I remember growing up, in San Francisco, and we always had, our house was, with 5 kids, so we had the space to do, we didn't have money to give, but we had, our in-kind donation was the use of our house, and of course, the 5 of us kids who were serving canapes and, slicing cucumbers and, they're taking, coats at the door and whatnot, and for us, it was always the VIPs. It was volunteers in politics. We had buttons. When Senator Cranston would come in, he would jog with all the kids, and the button said, "I ran with Senator Cranston," that he would pass out. So we had something where if you paid $1 a month, you got a newsletter zip sorted by us in our living room a few days before a third-class meal. And so we always were learning about the issues. And so when AIDS came along, we didn't know what it was at first. It was a lot of people were getting like, pneumonia. Why do people get sick, right? So we thought, is it meningitis? Is it pneumonia? Is it skin cancer? There was a number of different manifestations, and nobody knew what this was. It was starting to happen at UCSF. But we had a lot of friends that it was happening to. We knew a lot of people that were just starting to get very sick. And so this is the 1982. The presidential candidates for 1984 all came and spoke at the Democratic State Convention in Sacramento. And my mom said, I remember we were driving home from the convention. He said, wouldn't it be great if we had the convention? And so they put in a bid. It was like January of 82. They put in a bid, and a year later, the committee was going to vote. Now, at the time, the gay cancer was 1981, so it was just forming. But in San Francisco, it was really, just so widespread and very, very sad. And there were a lot of families who were finding out that their children were gay at the time they were finding out their children were dying. And there was not a lot of acceptance, obviously, right in San Francisco. And part of the National AIDS Memorial Grove being in San Francisco was a place where people could finally, sometimes years later, make that peace or have the people they never got at home, or the acceptance from their chosen family that they never got from their blood family. So at the time, my mom really wanted to bring the convention, and a lot of people were like, well, why would we go to San Francisco where all these people are have AIDS and we could catch it. So she said, what we're going to do is we're going to have all these meetings where we bring the community into our home, and we're going to bring the site selection committee when they come. And so what we're going to do is we're going to have Nancy and someone who was gay at the same time. We're going to dip or chip into the bowl at the same time so that they see we're not afraid of each other. We're going to eat together. We're going to talk together. We're going to hug. We're going to hold hands. We're going to do all the things that close friends do. And they got the convention. And so it was really, when you think about it now, you think, oh, it was the convention 84, fine, but the struggle was really to have the conservative National Democratic Party accept the fact that you were having it in a very liberal city. Again, code name gay, right? San Francisco Democrat was something Gene Patrick talked about in 1982. So it was right at the time we were trying to do this. So it was code name, right? And what happened over the years with AIDS, and I think that we find this with a lot, we find it with immigration, we find it with a lot of these issues we're working on, we find it with climate, we find it with public education, we find it with the constant onslaughts that we get, either the very conservative corporate libertarian movement that put in Donald Trump and Paul Ryan and all of those folks, and let's be clear, they're willing to give his racism and sexism a pass, tax cuts. Let's not kid ourselves about that, right? But also, there was something that came up for us, which was compassion fatigue. And we talked a lot about it. What do you do when you're going to all these funerals? What do you do when your friends are dying? What do you do when you're doing all this caregiving, knowing that there is no end of the rainbow other than hospice care, right? How do you keep yourself going? How do you create your own environment, your own loving environment? And how do you spell each other without getting a martyr complex or being mad at the people who left or had to step out and giving space for them to come back in? And how do you welcome new people in without scaring them so much about how awful and tired you are that they're like, oh my God, I can't work with these people. So I think we see it a lot now. They want us to have outrage fatigue. They want us to have compassion fatigue. They want us to give up. They want us to think that, their success is inevitable. And we just can't do that. So I think the answer is, number one, know what really drives you. Number two, find working community with people you really love and care about, and decide what the ethos of your circle is going to be. We were talking about in the context of Me Too earlier today with some of our friends with the Hawaii Women Lawyers, that my theory is every circle has an ethos to it, whether it's a family, whether it's a community group you're working with, whether it's your board, whether it's the society. And when someone in the circle says that they've been harmed by somebody else in the circle, the ethos of the circle, the culture, the character of the circle is determined by whether you stand behind the person who's accusing or the person who's been accused of the harm. In many cases, doesn't mean that people don't have rights and you don't have due process, but it means, are you listening to someone who's saying there's something wrong? There's something wrong here. Are we listening to that person? Are we giving them space? Are we giving them voice? Are we giving them care? That really tells the tale. And I think in a lot of our groups, because we're working so hard on the issues, we tend to be really hard on ourselves and really hard on each other. And you can't make the compassionate, beloved community that we're all going to talk about at the Unity Rally on Monday, MLK Day. You can't build that beloved community unless you really love yourselves and you love each other. And I think the most important thing that I've learned from my mom over the years is, number one, you can create your own environment. Do not restrict your hopes and dreams and thoughts about what is possible to what you're being told by the media, to what you're being told by Republicans, sorry, but conservative Republicans. Don't. Have your own imagination, build your own imagination and the dreams that you want, and give yourself room to recharge. When we talked this morning early, she said, well, I hope you're going to put politics on the shelf. I'm like, Mom, I have a day of event. She goes, no. But I mean, eventually, at some point while you're in Hawaii, like, be in Hawaii. And so, Peter's laughing out there. But the point is, if you don't rejuvenate, if you're not a whole person, if you're not building a life for yourself, then you don't have an appreciation of the quality of life you're trying to build for other people. So the best thing that you can do is remember, why am I doing this? What is my purpose? Am I working with people who respect me? Am I working in a way that respects myself and what I want to bring to this? And am I giving myself realistic benchmarks about making progress and change? But never, ever give up, and give your circles the opportunity to have the beloved ethos and culture that you want to see, because people are looking to you. People are tired. They're scared. You're not the only ones who are working really hard and are really exhausted. So they want to see what you model. I think that's why my mom is always so firm and confident out there, because she knows that for many people, she's the only person standing between us and Armageddon. So we need some strength, we need some courage, we need some focus, and she's not going to tell us the plan. She's not going to be all things to all of us, or even most things to most of us. But she's going to be authentically her, in the hopes that we see that and then we can be authentically us.
And I think by being authentically her, we started with impeachment, and we can end with that. This will probably be Nancy Pelosi's legacy as the one who held Donald Trump's feet to the fire and did it because of what she was and the years that it took to develop that strength.
Well, no, impeachment is what he did to himself.
Yes.
Her legacy will be patient protection and affordable care act.
Thank you again very much, Denby, for hosting this conversation. A few of our sponsors for tonight, and just for helping make sure that Christine can be here and spend this time with us. Planned Parenthood Votes Northwest and Hawaii. And a few of our individual sponsors as well, Leighton and Linda Taylor. Priscilla Brownie. Richard Chu and Rich Turner. And former Senator Jill Takuda. And, thank you, Jane, always reminding us to just acknowledge and thank everyone for being here as a part of the Passy Team APAC and partnering together with started, gosh, I don't know, about 17 years ago now, I think, and it was meant to be a space to lift up and support and promote pro-choice democratic women. And so to be able to be a part of this space and to be able to support pro-choice democratic women, it's an honor to work with you all in that endeavor and towards the mission that I think many of us collectively share. We do have some refreshments, so we have some food from Kaka'ako Kitchen. Please feel free to help yourselves. Just a reminder to malama your kuleana, take care of your trash afterwards, and there are some trash cans outside to help with that as well. But really, on behalf of the Passy Team APAC, all of the sponsors, all of the people here, Christine, just thank you so much. That you bring around the country and help support our communities across this country. And thank you to your beautiful family. Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Ella. I promised Ella, while I had Mike, I would put it in a good word for a dog. But we are gonna, Christine's gonna be outside signing books. Again, just a friendly reminder, if you could please put on the 3x5 or on a post-it what you want her to write. I think it'll help us make sure that everybody gets taken care of before we go tonight. So, mahalo again, everyone, for being there. Thank you, Becky.